Well, it's interesting. I mean, I know we're coming towards the end, but I want to press on this thread a little bit. So take, and we'll, if you're comfortable with it, we'll dive into some social topics that are there, just sticking on it. Let's take police brutality, right? Because I love what you're saying. And I think in some ways, the way I would try and approach that, if we were talking to somebody who says, pro police, defund the police, anything that's knocking the police is wrong. And they're going to say it potentially, if we're trying to understand, there's going to be a lot of people that say it from, I care about police. I care about people. We need law and order. We need structure. And I feel like the police are under attack. I don't want anybody to be hurt, but that's just the lens at which they're looking at it from. So in that lens, there is that humanity there. There is some goodness in that. Now, I think a lot of people might say, but yeah, Black people are being hurt or whoever it is, right? The marginalized group. But it gets back to that nuance now, because now there's that justification in somebody's head where they could feel like, yeah, I'm being that good person. I'm looking out for people. I'm looking out for police. That's what I'm worried about. And obviously we're not going to solve police brutality here, but in that type of complex situation, how do you work through that in a way? I mean, obviously there's triggering and there's emotions and all that comes into it, but as you're trying to weave through all that complexity with that general thesis that people are good, because I think that thesis is an interesting one, because I agree with it too. And I think most people agree with it. And even people that might think differently than you or I, and maybe are harming people, I think they believe it about themselves. Like, no, I'm good. I'm believing this for the right reason. How do we
navigate that? The problem, because you could believe that you're good, but you have to reckon with what that good means, quote unquote. I mean, I think police brutality is a complex and yet not so complex question. It's wrong. We know that cops, hurt people. We know that if you go to any protest, especially after Occupy, protests have become places where it's no longer safe to express your opinion. There was a protest this weekend that against abortion, that people got arrested. My niece was there, almost got arrested, and she's not even 21 yet, right? So that they got into the situation. It was like, I might get arrested, which is crazy when you're protesting for something that's very personal to you and also political. But to go back to police brutality, I think people who say, cops are great people and so forth, the first thing I would love to interrogate what they're saying, because we have a way of talking, but we're not really saying what we mean. Sometimes it could be that they genuinely believe that cops are good people, but behind that might be racism. Behind that might be you need law and order in order for you to feel safe, which is not true. So I would love to interrogate how they came to the beliefs, and I would love for them to be honest. I think a lot of this is that people are not actually honest, and we have code words for certain things that we know what you mean, but we're not saying it. And I think that it's through that dialogue and conversation that something can change, but also the impact of police brutality on all our lives. For example, as a woman, I don't feel comfortable walking down the street and asking a cop for help. Which is interesting, right? I also I was born in Romania. I'm an immigrant. I was a refugee. So for me, the police was never safe. So this is not a place, and it's again, context, right? So I've learned not to trust the police authorities as someone who's going to force me to do better or help me in any way. I also think that it's important to continue to have these conversations rather than shy away from them. And this is also a good example how when we think about police brutality, defund the police or fund the police. Okay, maybe there's a third way. Let's have more conversations, but we get so entrenched in, no, it's this or that I think it doesn't offer us the opportunity for dialogue, for consensus, and for things that we could think outside of these boxes that might be better. Yeah. And also, I'm very honest, and I'll have to, sort of put this out there, but then there are people who don't want those conversations, right? They say, oh, I love the police. They offer safety, but it's not about the police. It's because deep within those conversations, we go back to racism. We go back to sexism. We go back to things that you have to reckon within yourself. That is difficult.
So maybe I'll make this the last question, and I'm going to ask it in the spirit of the show. And hope, again, I think you know the spirit of it by this point, but let's say a police officer is listening or was on this show with us. I can imagine them saying to you, given what you just said, and even if they were trying to approach it the right way, of like, Silvia, and asking this genuinely, are you practicing what you preach, right? That view that you have of, as a woman walking down the street and also coming from Romania, the whole thing you just laid out, that you have a distrust of police. And I'm generalizing, so correct me if I'm saying that. Somebody go look at that and say, but are you practicing with your police? Are you actually trying to understand and embrace the nuance of there's lots of good police out there, and to make that statement, like that's everything against what we're talking about in this conversation? What's the response to something like that?
Again, we go back to where we started with structures. Sure, there are plenty of nice cops, and maybe you have a family member, that's a cop, that's a really nice person. But structures also shape behavior. Look at the military, look at the police. The way that we teach and indoctrinate people who enter those institutions are through power over, are through authority, respect, don't question. So it's not just, when we talk about defund the police or police is bad, it's not about the individuals. It's about these systems need to be reworked or rethought or changed fundamentally. We can't teach someone how to have power over. We can't give them all this ammunition and then expect them not to use it.